Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are doing well in this period of pandemic and probably as everybody in containment, but hopefully fine. I thought it was the right time for me to speak about a product from our company, which is not very well known and not so much promoted, but it could be very interesting in this special opportunity. I mean SODERMIX Pills. Allow me first to give a few reminders about chemicals, but also about cell biology. About chemicals, let's remind about reactive oxygen species, which are abbreviated as ROS and named also free radicals. These free radicals are the product of oxidative reaction inside the cells. They can be oxygen under triplet or singlet state, and probably the most important free radical is superoxide anion. And why? Because it's quite widespread in the organism and has a high cytotoxicity and is susceptible of causing very important damage in the cells. This is also the case for hydroxyl radical, but at a lesser extent, and nitric oxide is also important as far as it is involved in many biological pathways. Let's also mention peroxynitrate, hypochlorous acid, and alkoxy radical. Iron ions are also of importance in cell biology, and especially in the blood, in erythrocytes. You know that the role of erythrocytes is transporting oxygen from the lung and bringing it to the different organs. And what happens? We are again in presence of superoxide anion, and if this superoxide anion is binding to ferric iron, in this case, the reaction will give one molecule of oxygen and ferrous iron. And now is coming Fenton reaction in case of oxidative stress. And which is Fenton reaction? It's an ancient notion because Fenton published it at the end of the 19th century. And in Fenton reaction, the ferrous iron is recuperated by hydrogen peroxide molecules and giving ferric iron plus two radicals hydroxyl. So there is an increase in this case in oxidative stress, and Fenton reaction is producing oxidative stress. Now from chemicals to biology, and we'll talk a while about mitochondria. You know that mitochondria is one essential element of the cell, and which is the role of mitochondria is to produce energy, because the cell, when it's working, when it's functioning, for these functions needs energy. And what does mitochondria need to produce energy? Of course, nutrients, but also proteins and oxygen. And with these elements, mitochondria will be able to produce energy and being, one could tell, something like the power plant of the cell. Mitochondria, being the power plant of the cell, will be the nucleus of the metabolic machine in the cell. And we can compare very easily mitochondria with the motor of a car, you know. And if the car can go and work, it's because it has a motor. It's the same for the cell. And if we talk about motor, we talk about combustion, you know, and what is the motor doing? It's burning gas and bringing free radicals and some pollutants. And this may be by oxidation, and this is the case of mitochondria, the same. This may be by oxidation, giving electrons, or by reduction, that means receiving electrons. We were talking about the fact that a car, when it's functioning, a motor of the car, when it's functioning, will bring pollution. And this is the same with mitochondria. And we talk about the smog of mitochondria, because the mitochondria, once producing energy, will also produce free radicals. And these free radicals may be of three different types. Oxygen can catch one electron. In this case, we are creating superoxide radicals, or two electrons. In this case, it's not a radical, but a cytotoxic oxidant, hydrogen peroxide. And catching three electrons, there is a production of one molecule of water and one hydroxyl radical. Till now, we talked about oxidants and free radicals and reactive oxygen species, and all of them are, of course, a danger for the cell and for the organism. And that's why all living organisms, not only human beings, but also animals, plants, and until bacteria and virus, contain antioxidant enzymes. And these antioxidant enzymes are aimed to defend the cells and defend the organism against free radicals. And among these antioxidant enzymes, the most important is superoxide dismutase. Superoxide dismutase will scavenge superoxide radical. We talked about it. And in order to be active, it must be bound with atoms of copper, iron, manganese, or zinc, metallic atoms. And then comes catalase, because superoxide dismutase is scavenging superoxide radical to give hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide is another cytotoxic element. So there is a need for catalase in order to scavenge this hydrogen peroxide and transform it into water and oxygen. Besides, we have glutathione peroxidase, and this one is scavenging organic peroxides. Then we have a current fight in all living cells between antioxidants and oxidants. Oxidants, antioxidants. And usually this balanced state that we represent on this slide is the ideal homeostasis of the cells and ideal homeostasis of the organism. But what may happen sometimes is that the load of oxidants is very high, and in this case it may overpass the activity of the antioxidants. Or, on the contrary, antioxidants are quite weak for some reason, because of disease, because of aging, and in this case, oxidants are overpassing antioxidants, and we are in presence of what is named oxidative stress. This looks quite difficult, but it's rather simple. It's just the summary of what we told before. In the cells, you have oxygen, and in oxidation reactions, this oxygen can give superoxide anion. And if left, superoxide anion will give birth to nitric oxide and peroxynitrates. And on the other hand, it will be part of Fenton reaction. But hopefully, we have superoxide dismutase. And superoxide dismutase will scavenge these superoxide anions to hydrogen peroxide. And when left, hydrogen peroxide are able to give birth to hydroxyl radicals. But catalase is present. Catalase is taking care about this and will eliminate hydrogen peroxide, transforming it to water and oxygen. And on the other hand, we have also glutathione peroxidase, and this one will transform and reduce hydrogen peroxide to molecules of water. In nature, there are a lot of antioxidants, but all antioxidants are not the same. Some of them are better, let's tell into brackets, or more active, and other ones are less active. And this is why we have this pyramid of antioxidants. And at the top of the pyramid, the king of antioxidants is superoxide dismutase. And you see that following superoxide dismutase, we have mainly enzymatic antioxidants, catalase, glutathione peroxidase, coenzyme Q10, and only after are coming chemical antioxidants like glutathione, carotenoids, alpha-tocopherol, which is vitamin E, a liposoluble antioxidant, then an hydrosoluble one, ascorbic acid, vitamin C, flavonoids, vitamin A, lycopene, biotin, and only after these stuffs we have a list of oligoelements like selenium, zinc, copper, manganese, but also vegetal substances like polyphenols, which we are finding in grapes or green tea. In fact, there is close relationship between mitochondria, oxidative stress, and innate immunity. And we'll see following that innate immunity is under the control of oxidative stress and antioxidants. This drawing is featuring the relationship between mitochondria, oxidative stress, and innate immunity, and the mechanism of mitochondria-mediated signaling of innate immunity. The free radicals derived from mitochondria and DNA from mitochondria released at that time are directly inducing activation of innate immune responses, including activation of inflammasome and some inflammatory pathways, like, for instance, NF-kappa B. This is a good paper reporting the effects of antioxidants on immune system aging. As we told it before, when aging, there will be weakness about antioxidants. There is a lower level of antioxidants in the organisms, and then this will impact negatively immune system and immune responses. And for this reason, there is a need in aged people to take regularly antioxidants. Now let's talk a while about cytokine storm, which is important in this actuality, because this is the reason for which patients infected with COVID-19 may worsen and go to intensive care and even die. Here on the left in green, you can observe what normally happens in viral or bacterial infections. First, there is a immune recognition of the pathogen, and the consequence will be immune recruitment of competent cells and cascade of cytokines like interleukins, like tumor necrosis factor alpha. Let's tell a well-managed inflammation, which will permit a return to homeostasis and curation of this infection. But what happens in more severe cases on the right, and especially in COVID-19, immune recognition may be for some reason delayed or poorly done, and in this case there is a delayed or inappropriate immune response, which is causing pathogen growth, and in this case there is overexpression of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and there is a burst of cytokines, and then this is what we name cytokine storm. And with this very high level of cytokines, there is not only a defense mechanism against pathogen, but also high tissue damage, and this can lead to death of the patient. Superoxide dismutase is not only an antioxidant, but thanks to its antioxidant activity, it will also regulate the immune response. How does superoxide dismutase regulate immune response? Here we have the explanation. In case of infection or infectious disease, there is an activation of macrophages, and the macrophages are producing, among other pro-inflammatory cytokines, tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-alpha, which is leading to an increase of free radicals. And on the other hand, there is also an increased production of superoxide dismutase thanks to the action to the stimulation by the macrophage, and on the contrary, this increased superoxide dismutase will decrease free radicals, and then we can avoid oxidative stress, and then we can regulate the proper oxidative balance. This paper is also detailing how superoxide dismutase may favor the antiviral innate immune response, And this is by scavenging ROS, free radicals. And hence, superoxide dismutase is a crucial regulator of antiviral signaling, and depletion of superoxide dismutase, on the contrary, results in enhanced viral replication. And you see that besides its antioxidant activity, and maybe thanks to it, superoxide dismutase has a very important role in innate immune response. This is another demonstration that antioxidant treatment may regulate immune response during acute viral infection. In this case, mice were infected with lymphocytic choriomeningitis virus and treated with superoxide dismutase mimetic during 8 days, from the time of infection to the 8th day. And on day 8, it was the peak of the infection. It was observed that virus-specific IgM and IgG antibody-secreting cells were decreased 22 and 457-fold compared to non-treated animals. That's really a great result. It's a spectacular result. And in addition to this decrease in the number of cells, the treatment decreased the number of functional virus-specific CD4 plus T cells. And really, SOD could be antiviral? This paper is interesting because it was published in 1997, and this was the golden age of research against HIV. And this paper is demonstrating that superoxide dismutase was able to inhibit the replication of this virus of human immunodeficiency. Here it was demonstrated that superoxide dismutase administered by aerosol was able to inhibit respiratory syncytial virus infection in rats, not in humans, but in rats. The previous paper was reporting an interesting property of superoxide dismutase in the regulation of innate immunity, but not explaining it. And in this paper, we have this explanation. Here it is. When the organism is infected by a virus, by a bacteria, there will be activation of toll-like receptors. And as a consequence, activation of inflammasome and production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, all the list of interleukins, TNF-alpha, among others, and this will lead to the activation of innate immune system. And as a consequence of pro-inflammatory cascade, we'll have production of free radicals. And these free radicals will permit post-translational modifications of biomolecules, which will impact again the toll-like receptors, and also these free radicals will directly act on inflammasome activation. Then there is like a loop, like a vicious circle, and all of this is due to this oxidative stress. And superoxide dismutase will work at this level, and by scavenging the free radicals, it will avoid this loop and avoid this vicious circle. Here in this paper, it was reported that antioxidants were potential antiviral agents in the case of infection by encephalitis virus, Japanese encephalitis virus. On the left, you can see that the virus is impacting the cell and mitochondria to produce free radicals. And these free radicals will activate the pro-inflammatory cascade through the cytokines, and then this pro-inflammatory cascade will impact the nucleus and will permit the replication of the virus. On the right, you see that administration of antioxidants, and especially enzymatic antioxidants and especially superoxide dismutase, will permit to scavenge these free radicals and then to avoid excess pro-inflammatory cascade and then avoid stimulation of the nucleus and replication of the virus. And now, which implications and which consequences may it have in COVID-19 infection? The mechanism of COVID-19 infection is quite simple and quite classical. It's similar to any viral infection, and by the production of free radicals of reactive oxygen species causing oxidative stress. And if nothing is regulating the oxidative stress, we are reaching the cytokine storm that we talked about, and with all the danger of finishing with acute respiratory distress syndrome, and with all the danger it may mean for the patients. What happens in case of administration of antioxidants? In a classical way, the antioxidants will scavenge free radicals and avoid, or at least reduce oxidative stress, and then avoid cytokine storm and avoid to reach the last and worst issue, which would be acute respiratory distress syndrome. COVID-19 is obviously a new entity, and we have much to learn about it. But on the contrary, acute respiratory distress syndrome is a well-known syndrome by lung specialists, and for a long time it was published that ROS signaling was very important in the pathogenesis of this syndrome, and that the role of antioxidant was also crucial. As you can observe, there is quite a lot of publications about this matter. Another one. One more. Now, a very recent paper about the recommendation of an antioxidative therapy for improving not only lung injuries, but also cardiac injuries in critically ill COVID-19 infected patients. Very important, CDC, the Center for Disease Control, based in Atlanta in the United States, and which is heading the fight against infectious disease in the world, was recommending a few days ago that it should be prescribed antioxidants, not only for the prevention of acute respiratory distress syndrome, but also for reducing the level of inflammation, reducing the level of injuries in patients with COVID-19. Now, last but not least, our product, SODERMIX Pills. It features oral superoxide dismutase. And this enzyme is presented under gastro-resistant tablets with enteric coating. And in this way, it cannot disintegrate in the stomach. Of course, if you are administering normal tablets, any kind of common tablet with superoxide dismutase, it will not be useful because superoxide dismutase is sensible to the gastric juice and it would be destroyed in the stomach. On the contrary, this special galenic form permits that the whole SOD content reaches the gut and be absorbed integrally in the gut. Each tablet is containing 250 international units of superoxide dismutase, and importantly, this product is suitable for celiacs as it doesn't contain gluten. As a conclusion, I would tell that this time of pandemic of COVID-19 would be a unique opportunity for SODERMIX Pills, because as well as prevention of infection of the disease, it can relieve in infected patients the symptoms of the disease and avoid the last steps that are the most dangerous for the patients and that can lead to his death.